today actually I was like, why do I like Sunday so much? So
The surprise
maybe
box.
that thing in the brain, because Sunday we're gonna go buy the surprise
Right,
box.
that's it.
It releases endorphins and memory, and you remember that
Yeah,
feeling.
I love
of it.
Sundays.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all, what's interesting is I think we probably all have a certain feeling for specific days, good and bad, right?
Yeah.
From growing up into our adulthood, there's certain days of the week that probably inspire us and some days that don't. And I figure that's interesting because you just said you really like Sundays. But I didn't, because I always would think, oh, I have school Monday.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'll work.
And growing up in England too, on Sundays everything was closed, so it was always the most boring day, and you had school. So, yeah,
You have to do your homework.
exactly. I have negative associations with Sunday. But now everything's just open 24/7, so it makes no difference. But back then, yeah, everything closed on Sundays.
I liked Friday nights because
Yes,
school
of
was
course.
out. Friday night, you get to stay up late. You watch whatever you want to watch. You get to
Yeah.
eat your junk food late because you could sleep in the next day. And I really loved Friday nights.
Oh yeah.
I did. And my dad and I would stay up late and watch scary movies, the old scary movies like
Yeah.
Frankenstein and
Yeah.
Dracula. George, do you like Dracula?
I made a movie, Dracula.
You did?
Yes.
Wow.
So it's
Well,
on
you're
this
from
channel.
Romania, so I thought maybe there'd be a connection there.
In Venice, they have Dracula Festival, Carnival.
Yeah.
Yep, I went to two of them.
We're live.
Hello, I'm Tiffany Rothman. Welcome to Filter 90211. On my right is Mr. Chris Slone.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hello. And on my left is Mouna, Laine,
Hi,
and Paul
Tiffany.
Rogers.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Chris, how was your week?
Oh, it was exciting. Actually, it was really kind of busy and hectic, but I was really looking forward to today's show and working with getting Paul as a guest. I was really excited. And what's interesting about Paul Rogers is that he's actually my neighbor. So I didn't have far to go.
No, we live opposite one another.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was excited about that and working on what some of our discussion points could be, and plus everyday life stuff. So I had a good week, Tiffany. What about you?
Good. I saw Mouna. She's the wonderful beautician. She did facials, and she created her own products. She has her own business.
Wow.
And I'm very lucky since I moved to North Hollywood. She was the first one I went to, and it was over 2 years ago. I count my blessing. Hello.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for
Hi, Mouna.
inviting me. Hi, how are you?
Can you grow hair?
If I can grow hair, no, that's not what we
I could
do.
use some.
Actually, I can recommend something.
Okay.
Very simple.
What would you recommend?
Aloe vera plant.
So I just rub it in my scalp?
Absolutely, I did that. I started.
Me too.
My hair started thinning, and I did it, and it worked. And I recommended to Tiffany, and she can tell you
And
it
I
works.
just started a little bit. I just started like a
It
couple
takes
months ago.
2-3 months, and you start seeing growth naturally. When
Just any kind of aloe vera?
it's the kind that is very popular here in LA. That's the one I tried.
The one that you grow in your garden.
Yeah.
Yes,
I have
that's
aloe
the
vera
typical
plants.
one
Cut
that
them-
we
cut
have
them.
here in California. Yes,
And just kind of rub it
Yeah.
on my scalp.
you open
Yep.
it, you take the gel, you scrap it, take the gel and massage your scalp. I always massage it on my hair, and your hair will look good. Like it makes like if you just did styling.
And
gel.
face too. You can do it on your face
Your
too.
face for tightening, lifting, repairing.
So it could be like
Yes.
a facelift.
It's
Yeah.
it is a facelift, and it did help me grow hair, and a lot of people.
Wow.
I think it's an interesting subject because we're going to talk about growth, personal growth, wellness, and I think part of the root of growth and wellness is that, and Tiffany and I talked about this last week, is we have to be able to feel good about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we feel good about ourselves? There's different ways. And I think, let's face it, a lot of times, we have to get up and look in the mirror every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And doing that, sometimes you don't always like what you see. And I always felt like if I enjoyed what I saw in the mirror, I tended to have a better day.
Right.
Because I just felt confident. I felt good in myself. And
Yes.
just bringing that up now is like, it makes me wonder now, as humans, are we really that attached to our looks as far as how we're going to feel about ourselves every day?
Absolutely.
I think that if we really feel good inside, it helps. But since we live in this world, this society, we don't always feel good inside.
Right.
And sometimes it reflects our facial expression a lot more than we would want to be, would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the outside of our body is our skin, is our temple. The soul, the organs, everything lives inside. So it is your duty to take care of it, regardless you want to look good or bad. You have to take care of this outer layer. And automatically, when you take care of it, you look better. It makes you feel better. That's how I see it.
Yes. And it's not always easy. It takes work.
And I always felt like the outer layer for me was a protected shell. So as I got older, I wanted to, look better. I started working out. I felt like if I physically looked better, it could protect me from what's really going on the inside.
Right.
At times.
Like you feel like you could cover up your vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And what's wrong with being vulnerable?
Yeah.
That's what I would like to know. In this
Mhm.
society, we are all vulnerable one way or another.
True.
What's wrong with being vulnerable? What's wrong with being weak?
Good point.
Because we are human beings. We have all kind of feelings. We can always be. You can't always be like a robot or
Right.
metal. And
Yeah.
we have like 100 feelings within us.
Yeah, actually, I think when you accept your vulnerability, that's where growth starts, because you start working on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think part of your vulnerability is also your upbringing and how your surroundings are, your friends, your family. How will they accept that vulnerability? And sometimes they don't. Sometimes you think they won't. You're making assumptions, but they will. And I think we're afraid of that. We're afraid of what would happen if I allow myself to be exposed, if you will.
Right.
Yes, and you won't be accepted by your loved ones. And if they don't accept you, really, then they're not your loved ones, and who need them?
True.
So I think it kind of leads into, we're in a society now where there's just so many things for external wellness. How do I make my skin look better, my hair look better, everything. And to me, I saw a big shift happen in the 80s with the big fitness boom. And from that point, it went to fitness, to skin, to hair, and you can grow hair, and you can do this, and you do that. And ever since then, it just seems like every decade it just increases more and more. Where when I think back as a kid in the 70s, I didn't really see that as much. It seemed like being kind of a little out of shape and just smoking and drinking seemed like the cool thing. And then the 80s, from that point on, it was like, you want to look better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, are we still in that realm now where, you need to look good?
You want to be good. Now we're shifting. My experience showed me that it was more about looking good. It doesn't matter how. Now it's more about just starting to shift about being good. We want to be healthy. We're eating better. We're shifting into, for skincare, for example, we're shifting into vitamins and protein. We know what we need to look good. To be good, not just look. We can just look good with makeup.
And also talk about vulnerability. Once you're sick, like you have a cold or flu over the holidays, it come out on your skin, believe it or not. 'Cause last time I saw Mouna, she said she sees a difference. I said, yes, I was in a lot of medications and I was really had a bad cold and things like that.
Right.
And this is where looking good is gonna come from the inside, from what you put in your body.
So then the truth comes out in your skin, no matter
Yes.
what's happening.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
cannot
Yep.
hide it.
You cannot. The skin is absolutely your. That's the I call it the outer layer. You take things inside, and it shows things that you might be trying to hide in the outside. So you'd better just take care of it so it looks good, because we all want to look good.
So the eyes could be, the picture of the soul, but the skin could be the picture of your overall health.
The skin is also the picture of the soul and the spirit. The way you feel shows on your skin when you're happy.
So how
you're
do I
glowing.
look? Am I happy now?
You're balanced.
I'm balanced.
You're
Okay,
grounded.
That's good. Well, that's the first time somebody ever told me I was balanced.
You're balanced to me.
But I think
You have that. You're in this moment. Doesn't mean in general, but this is maybe your. Or maybe I'm sure you're doing it because you want to be here.
Okay,
So
I buy
you're-
that.
So you are enjoying the moment. So we can see, that you're grounded and you're balanced.
Okay.
I think social media, though, has kept or ramped up the pressure on outward appearance, because, especially for young people, because young people gravitate more towards the social media that's all about photo and video, in other words, Instagram, and rather than older folks like us tend to be more interested in Facebook, but there's also much more of a written element. So I have 4 stepdaughters in their early 20s, and yeah, appearance is still really important, largely because of that, because that's how they're projected on social media. So it's principally
Yeah.
photo and video,
But I'm seeing, I've been in this industry, and I come from a country where beauty and the way you look is very, very important. We literally do spas 4 times a week, 4 times a month, men and women, the whole body. It's a big part of our budget.
Right.
Literally, a woman in some villages, when a man go ask for a woman's hands to marry her, the father will ask about how much budget he's gonna put on her spa.
Wow.
That's part of,
Right.
of accepting him to marry,
Interesting.
accepting the bride. So, but what I'm saying now, Danny went too superficial to these Instagram filters. And what I'm seeing, I keep touching this, with the generation of born in the 2000, they are now 23. They're really going back to looking natural. They want to look natural. Less makeup, less eyelashes, which I have nothing wrong against that, but they're not putting it on a daily basis. They want to look
Yeah.
good occasionally, but they want to be good, and that is really impressive.
No, you're right. Over the last 2 years, there has apparently, my kids have to tell me this, kids have moved away from using filters on Instagram. Now, that might just be fashion, but to me, that's the whole fun of Instagram. But yeah, on their own images, they don't anymore, because it's mostly older folks who are going nuts on the filters still, but the kids don't use them now.
Yes, or if they do it for fun, not to
Right.
give that impression.
Right, they're not trying to fool anybody. They'll just do it,
Yes.
a ridiculous extreme
Yeah,
filter when you know it's a filter.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was I was hearing on the BBC last week about the crazy AI stuff they have now, which can produce video of yourself, but the most impossibly beautiful version of yourself, and how once people have seen themselves that way, then they can't deal with their real self and the impact it's having on the psychology of people. It's one of those, you're letting the genie out of the lamp. Once you've seen that version, then you're always disappointed when you look in the mirror, So these are all issues which folks have to deal with now, which they didn't have to 10 years ago.
Yes.
So like they more accepting of themselves. So that's also accepting of your vulnerability as
Yeah,
well.
they're coming back to that, yeah.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
Paul, you're musicians, right?
I am, yeah.
I love musicians. You guys are so brilliant.
Some of us.
Some
yeah,
of us,
yeah. I wouldn't put myself in that category, but yeah.
Yeah. So do you write music a lot when you feel vulnerable?
I'm not a songwriter as such. I contribute my parts to, the guitarist in our band is the principal songwriter. So there is self-expression obviously going into the bass lines, and we all contribute to the arrangements and stuff. whether I express vulnerability in that way, I don't think my bass playing is that nuanced. No, but real songwriters, absolutely, that's what they're doing. I mean, that's the classic. Because I'm also a journalist, and so that's the classic thing when I interview songwriters. They say that they can often express stuff in song that they wouldn't express in day-to-day conversation. So it becomes that vulnerability. And if you listen to a lot of the great songs, they're very vulnerable.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was just I don't know how I didn't know this. I was just yesterday reading about Dolly Parton. I think her song Jolene is one of the greatest songs ever written. And obviously a huge hit song. Turns out she wrote that song and I Will Always Love You on the same day. It's just blurred. But Jolene, the most vulnerable song ever, where she's approaching this other woman saying, I know you can take my man, but please don't. And the song was a huge hit. It resonated with people because it's so vulnerable.
And you know the story how she came up with that song, right?
Right, the bank teller, right, was flirting with her husband, I think.
No, that's not what I heard.
Oh, what did you hear?
I heard that the 7-year-old girl who a fan of her and her husband carry her backstage and say like, this is one of your young fan, and her name was Jolene, and she's so adorable, and Dolly said, well, I have to write a song about her.
No, you're right. That's where she got the name and the visual from. But the tone of the lyric allegedly was a beautiful bank teller who would flirt with her husband whenever he was. And she realised she couldn't compete with this woman because she was so beautiful. So she went to her and said, I'm begging you, don't take my man. Which is vulnerable. She didn't fight her about it. She begged her.
She's willing to be vulnerable, but we all know that's not true.
Right, but the fact that the song was such a huge hit and is still so well known shows that people vulnerability resonates with people.
Yes, I mean, and how can anybody compete with Dolly Parton?
Well, true. Allegedly, that's why I don't actually believe the backstory of the song, but the sentiment is vulnerable. Whether it's true or not. So.
Well, I can add something to that. I used to sing Jolene when I was 10. I didn't even understand what I was singing. Just the song hit Morocco, and older people would sing it. They know what they're singing, maybe.
Right.
The English is our third language.
Right.
But the melody, the music,
Fantastic.
the voice.
Yes.
So
And the first time I hear...
Jolene, please. Could you sing Jolene?
Little bit, okay. Jolene, 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 Jolene. And then I know we're gonna...
Don't take away my man. So you like being vulnerable when you was 10 years old?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that was, but I only I know the music. I love music. The notes are amazing. So we'll be singing it, but just don't knowing what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what's interesting is we started out talking about the external part of us. So, how do we look on the external side, and then we have that internal side, the vulnerable side. And there's different things we do to deal with our external looks, like we talked about aloe vera and how people look and using filters or non-filters, and then we talk about that vulnerability on the inside. And Paul's talking about music, and I always looked at artists. I think the root core of an artist is that's the way they're going to express themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Some people express from the outside. Some people are expressing themselves from the inside out. How much of that thought is true, Paul, as far as those that are musicians, that they have this inner core of emotions and feelings, and that's where everything stirs. That's the pot that everything brews from.
Well, I think that's as diverse as humanity itself, honestly, because I mean, with songwriters, they probably are, if they're writing songs for themselves, they're not selling songs, then they're probably being pretty honest and pretty vulnerable. But the other thing you come across a lot in all the performing arts is that, like, some of the most, flamboyant and confident frontmen and frontwomen are in fact very insecure people, So your art can be your armor too. Like you were talking about earlier with your physique, some people, hide behind it, and some of the people who look most confident on stage, in fact, have a lot of insecurities off stage. But true songwriters, sure, I think they'll almost all tell you that they find it easier to express something in song than they do in conversation. Yeah, that's almost universal. I'm sure I don't interview other types of artists, but I'm sure you'd get that from painters and whoever else too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So do you feel then that, in your experience, a lot of front vocalists really have a lot of insecurity in your experience?
I'm not going to say a lot, but it's certainly not unknown. You know, I mean, you assume when you see someone in front of thousands of people, you know, with their foot up on the monitor, you know, being idolized, that they're very happy and competent people. But I think we all know there's many stories that suggest the opposite, you know, off stage, which is precisely why they do that job, you know, because that's the time they can feel good about themselves. But it's often, it's an armor, it's a mask, it's a screen, and good for them. They've turned it into an art form. They've entertained people with it. So no, I wouldn't say it's universal. Some of those people really are like that off stage too. Some of them are like that 24/7, you know. But there's many who aren't. Yeah. I don't want to name names.
So what do you think the driving force is then, for musicians, in your opinion? What drives you?
I think it definitely varies from genre to genre too, how you came into it. I think it was for myself, finding a place in the world, you know, something you thought you could do fairly well. You know, I was thinking about this the other day, because some of the people I've been in bands with over the years have been extremely successful and made a lot of money from music. But it was not something we ever talked about as kids. We never talked about wanting to make money out of it, and we never talked about wanting to get attention from girls from it either. We just wanted to be in a cool band, a band that our peers would respect. And that was the really big thing for us. It was never about playing cover songs. It was always about making original music. And then just making a life from that on our own terms. The travel was a big part of it. You know, the touring was always a big part of it for me. That was definitely a big thing. I love to travel, but I'm not very good at vacationing because I like to be active. So the idea of being paid to go and do your favorite thing every night, that was perfect. So that drove me a lot. And a lot of it was the classic, you know, especially because, you know, I was involved with punk music. It was the rebellion against your parents, which was natural at that point. My parents were older. They were quite conservative in those days. And my dad was an army officer, you know, so playing punk rock really appealed to me. And I grew up at a time when in the UK, when we had very high unemployment, when we had Mrs. Thatcher in power, and where I lived in particular, we had extremely high unemployment. It was very depressed, so punk just came through like a hurricane and made such sense to us. And that was part of it too. There was a political and social voice to it, absolutely, yeah.
Do you believe it helped you grow as a person?
Undoubtedly it did. I mean, I think the thing that has enhanced my life the most is rather boring practical level, is that early on I often managed the bands I was into. In other words, I was booking the shows, and in the end that got really out of hand. I mean, you know, I was living in England and booking tours here in America and across Europe, and you know, looking back, it was really involved. And this was before the internet, so you're doing stuff with fax machines, and it was crazy. And we had no money, so on a time. But I learned so much from that, because if you can sell yourself, you can sell anything. And it's really hard to get on the phone and say, "Did you receive my demo tape? And what did you think?" Because it's really personal if they didn't like it. So if you can do that, you know, you can do a lot of other stuff. So I learned a lot of life skills from managing the band, for sure. And then being in a van with people who you don't necessarily know that well at the beginning for months, weeks at a time, it's also a good life skill to learn. You learn a lot of diplomacy. And one of the things I love about bands is you rub shoulders with people you probably wouldn't necessarily know otherwise, you know, from very diverse walks of life, that you just share this love for this type of music, and that's what brought you together. But there's a lot of diplomacy and a lot of kind of personal politics involved in being able to get along with people for long periods in enclosed spaces when you're all doing something you're really passionate about, you know, and you all have slightly different ideas about how to do it. So yeah, there was a lot of growth in that, yeah, in the early days of the band touring, yeah, sure.
You know, you mentioned something about respect from your peers.
Mm-hmm.
how important is it for us as human beings to have respect amongst peers?
Probably a lot more important than we would like it to be.
And why is that? Why do we need respect from our peers?
I guess because the treatment, you don't want to walk down the street and have some people talking very badly about you in front of everybody. Maybe that's one of it. That's one of the reasons. You should have their respect, otherwise they would, say things or mistreated you in a certain situation that could damage your life or career.
I think some people are really good at not letting that affect them more than others, and others are very affected with what other people think about them.
Yes, that's a good attitude. I said they might feel that they want the respect, but if they don't get it, they probably said to themselves, "It doesn't matter. I respect myself. That's all
Right.
it matters. I'm doing it for myself. I can't control others' feelings."
But you're a psychologist, you know where this is coming from. What we didn't grow up like this. We grew up very vulnerable to what people
Yeah.
think about that. And if someone doesn't respect you, you think you've done something wrong. We grew up with respect is earned, so you have to do so much. I agree halfway, but sometimes you respect yourself and someone would do something to just break you apart, and you would start you lose your self-esteem. And again, this is where social media, we're gonna go back, like it's a full circle. These are the good thing about social media, that now we know that what you can tell about someone can damage that
Yes.
person. And also I have learned how to protect myself from those who do not respect me.
Right. I think I agree with Tiffany that the older I got, I realised that everything is about self-esteem. And then when I was doing my part for raising 4 girls, especially in their teens, I saw that, very graphically, that everything was about self-esteem. The biggest mistakes I've made in my life was when I had low self-esteem, and vice versa. And it was the same with our girls. They would get into bad situations when they had low self-esteem. And so it's all about that. So you're right, Chris, that some people have better self-esteem than others, which means you don't care so much about respect from others because you are confident in
Yes.
yourself. And,
Yes.
Yes, but when you are younger, you tend to be with peers, sometimes roommate, throw in roommate. You know what I mean. When you go to college, sometimes you don't get to pick.
Right.
They throw into you, and you have some of them with low self-esteem, and you can see the way they behave, and they don't have respect for themselves, and they don't seem to have respect for others around them.
But yeah, I think, Chris, you're right, that respect, if you look at, in the most extreme example, like road rage, it's usually because someone feels disrespected. And that's disrespected by a complete stranger. They're never going to see this person again. But in some extreme cases, people, they will chase that person down and do something extremely violent. Same with bar fights. It's usually because someone feels disrespected. It's really central to, but quite why that is, coming back to your question, why that's, so innate in humans, I don't know. I guess we know we rely on other people to survive, but
Yeah, like Luna said, we brought up, when we were growing up, that we have to be respected by others, and it's important. And maybe that's the influence from our upbringing in society.
Yeah.
But as we get older, we know that the influence doesn't matter. It's what we have to do.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely we were raised that way. But it was important what the neighbours thought and everything.
Yes.
But that's obviously still the case. I mean, as they always say, if you look at the front of someone's house, it's generally very different to the back of their house because we worry about appearances. We worry about what people think. That's why they have HOAs now, because they want to control, So yeah, the front of your house is a show, and the back of your house
Yeah.
less so.
I don't know why. The front of my house is not a show at all.
No, nor mine. But
It's the mess. The back is a lot comfortable.
But you know
more
what I'm saying,
comfortable.
we still do, we care about what the neighbours think, and we care about what our peers think. And I guess that goes back to, humans have always been social animals. We've always found strength in groups. So I guess you worry that if no one respects you, you'll be outcast from the group. And I guess it's instinct for us that if you're outcast from the group, if we're talking about the caveman days, you'd probably be in big trouble, But as you say, there are people who care a lot less about that, who seem very confident. So, yeah, it's all about
So
substance.
I want to roll that back into the social media discussion. So when we were talking about social media and people using filters, and I always felt in the beginning of social media, I thought it was pretty intimidating because I would go on to, LinkedIn, I would go on to Instagram, Facebook, and like everybody, to me, like, wow, is there that many good-looking people in the world? How come I don't see them when I'm walking down the street?
Right.
It's like, wow, and I know I'm not that photogenic, so it's kind of like, okay, so how do I become a part of this society, if you will, because it is a different society, social media, where it's been taken to a level of you have your life, in the real world, and then you have your life, which could be the same or different in the social media realm, almost like a virtual world.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's getting to that point. I think, which is healthy in a way, because I think now most of us get the idea of social media, and we know that what we see of our friends' lives is not reality. So it's like when you watch a movie, you suspend your disbelief. You know it's not real, but you enjoy it anyway. And so I think it's just generally taken that what we see from our friends is the top 2% of their life. It's not. I mean, a thing I notice, especially about people who post more infrequently on social media, is it's usually vacations and Halloween, the two least typical time. Halloween when you're literally in a costume and makeup, but they always post, and when we're on vacation, when you're just lying on a beach in a swimsuit, completely atypical of our lives. But that's the stuff, we don't just post, the view from our office window every day, or the fan above our bed, or those are really the things that we see. But I think what's good about it is that people have got that idea now. Yes. I think we all know social media is a bit of a game. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors,
And so I start thinking then, are the smoke and mirrors the way people want to obviously be perceived? And is it also, are they looking for that life that they don't have? And now they can kind of create their own cinematic life, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's given people an opportunity to reinvent themselves. But I think people were doing that long before social media anyway. It's like, for example, if you bought a flashy car in the 1970s on credit to appear rich, you weren't really rich. You were making payments, but you gave that appearance. Same with flashy clothes, same with the front of the house versus the back of the house. So it's just a new medium for the same phenomena. People were always trying to, I own fake Rolexes, you know what I mean? You're trying to give an impression of something that's not really factual. And I think we've always been aware of that. And yet it's got really crazy with filters and AI and everything, but I think people get it for the most part, that it's not real.
What you make me think of, when I was at Sundance Festival in January, one of my movies made it there, and I was in it. And after we left, I was at the airport, and I talked to someone, and they said they was there, they saw my movie, and I said, oh, I play so-and-so. And they look at me and say, you don't look like you look different than that, bro. I said, because the hairdresser is phenomenal, and the makeup artist. And I have to applaud myself looking at the movie.
Yeah, I think that you come across that with celebrities. They tell you this, that their fans are sometimes disappointed to meet them because they so associate them with a character, especially people who've had this, a long-running role in like a soap opera or a series. It's one of the reasons they say don't meet your idols, because they're often not the same as and so I guess social media has made that phenomena much more widespread. Is that, like you said, celebrities and actors and musicians were always, they had glam teams, they were photographed carefully, and now we can all do that. People have those ring lights at home.
How do I get a glam team? I need a glam team.
I know.
Well, you know what? You hire a hairdresser and a makeup artist, and
But who pays these people?
So you just need money, and you got
need
yourself
money.
a glam
Yeah,
team.
like you've seen the Real Housewives, right? They all have glam teams because they just have money. They're not actors or.
that's right. I mean, the industry professionals said that any professional artist, makeup artist, and hairdresser can make you look 1,000 times better than you are. So that's great.
So who do we think would wake up in the morning and look exactly the way they would on TV or film or in a magazine? Does anybody come to your mind that you think, when they wake up, they probably look the same?
Babies, kids.
Well, I hate to say it, but I think it's still a lot easier for men.
Yeah.
I think even male celebrities who are considered sex symbols or whatever, they're probably a lot closer to what they look like when they wake up in the morning, and that's still okay. I think there's still a lot more pressure on women to go to a lot more trouble to achieve that. And so I think some of these people, someone like Viggo Mortensen, he probably kind of looks like that, I suspect. Yeah, I've never met the guy, but I think some of these male celebrities are probably quite close to what they look like around the house.
How about Mick Jagger? Do you think he looks the same when he wakes up?
Not now. But back in the day, he probably did. Yeah, sure. I mean, sometimes you see snapshots of, like I've seen snapshots, for example, of a guy who's very kind of normal is Paul McCartney. I saw some photos today of him just like, he was working on his house, which I was impressed with. He was doing it himself. But yeah, he looked like Paul McCartney up a ladder. You know what I mean? And so you never quite know how doctored or how staged these things are. But yeah, I think some of these, there are some people, yeah. And I've noticed too, it has become very prevalent for even the most glamorous celebrities to show photos of themselves without makeup. And very popular on social media is those ones where they do both, isn't it? But they're in no makeup, then they wave their hand and they're in makeup. That's become very popular. So it's not like they're trying to kid anyone like, this is really how I look. It's just, I like the way this looks too. And I don't see any harm in that.
I'm actually seeing more of that now.
Yes.
We were
That's
talking
very
about,
popular.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more people on social media that are very high profile people, I would call A-list entertainers, really. You get to see them. And they don't care, they're in their kitchen talking to you, and, they're not made up, their hair's not done.
Well, I think they've wised up too that at a certain level of celebrity, sooner or later the paparazzi are going to catch you walking the dog. And so you might as well just beat them to the punch. You know what I mean? Because sooner or later there's going to be, if you Google any famous name, no makeup, there's hundreds of pictures. So they just do it themselves. And, it's always better to jump than be pushed, right? And yeah, it's definitely become a real phenomenon lately, and I'm all about it, yeah. But
they're already accepted, so I think there's less stress for them, because even though you might be a little shocked at first, they're still who they are. If they have a well-known respect in whatever industry they're in, they're still going to be respected. So they've kind of built up that ability that, at this point, I don't really care what people think. Exactly. I think people that maybe haven't quite gotten to where they want to be, maybe on the inside, and you're thinking, I still need to look good until I earn that level of status. And a lot of people probably, in the industries, only so many people get to the top level status. So there's a lot of people that probably still feel they need to be looking their best. Yeah,
I agree. There's that phrase, nothing to prove. There's a point where there's nothing to prove. And, there's a point where were a certain photo of whatever type to come out, your career is still vulnerable to that. You couldn't afford the PR damage. But when you get to a certain degree of celebrity and a certain degree of wealth, even if that stuff does come out, you can roll with it, and I think, those people are Paul McCartney. What does he care? So I agree with that, that there's a stage where there's a level of celebrity where it actually gets easier, ironically, in terms of appearances.
So let's look at different ethnic backgrounds and countries, and based on that, how it was to grow up with, what did you need status, did you not need status? We were doing a little discussion before we started recording, and I think we're all from different countries. We were all born and growing up in different countries, and Mouna, you were talking about how it was as a child where you grew up. So every country obviously has a different twist to how somebody's going to grow up.
Yes.
And expectations. Let's kind of just go around and see what it was like and what you felt you needed to do to be accepted and respected where you grew up. So why don't we start with Paul?
Well, I was just in the UK a few weeks ago, and my mum was saying, my mum as we call her, my mum was saying, I think that I thoroughly agree with it, that the UK does so many things that the US does 20 years later. So that also pertains to appearances, as it were. So it's kind of a boring answer, but it's very, very similar to to the US when I was growing up in England in the 70s, for sure. Yeah, there was pressure to have a nice car, nice clothes, you know, to be put together, as they say. The standards were lower than they were today, especially in terms of personal appearance. I mean, I go to England now. I come from a very rural area, and the girls, the young women there now look like movie stars. They know, you know, they've learned from YouTube how to do really advanced makeup and hair. It's incredible, you know. So that's certainly changed. But growing up, no, it was probably very similar to what you went through in the States in terms of what you did to impress the neighbours or not impress the neighbours. Yeah.
How about you, Mouna?
Well, I'm born in the 70s. I did grow up in Morocco. It is very important back then and until today. It's a country where they love to wear brands. They're very like, it's not about whatever you're wearing. They literally want to check it out if it's original. If you're wearing a Louis Vuitton, you'd better be wearing a Louis Vuitton. Otherwise, you're called fake. We're very original. I don't know, it's in our DNA. Makeup, now it comes to beauty. You want to be accepted, but you'd better not put a lot of makeup for women, because again, we go back to that original thing. And yes, that's my generation. What your aunt, your neighbor thinks about you is very, very important. And I think I feel more comfortable here in the US. I learned to accept myself the way I am more. I learned to wear a dress where I'm more comfortable. Like just today, what I'm gonna wear, I'm like, I just wanna be comfy. That doesn't exist in Morocco until today. You have to cross the street, go into the bakery. You have to dress well. And that's not something I like about my country. Even though I like a lot of things, they're too much into details.
Right.
What the neighbor gonna think about you if she see you crossing the street with the flip-flop? Oh, I love flip-flops. And my last visit to Morocco, you said your last visit to England, I bought this really very simple dress that I was gonna wear a day. We suggested let's go to downtown in Rabat, and I just wanted to wear that little simple dress. And it burst literally a fight with my sister, who said, you were not going out like this. You're not going out like that.
Wow.
And it was a fight. No, I want to wear this. And she's like, even her husband joined the communication to say, well, if you want to dress like this, then we're not going out. Until today. And that hurts a lot. Those are things that I don't want to go back to Morocco, even though I love Morocco. I cannot live there because of the way you look is very important.
That's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, yes.
I think I would crack under that pressure.
I did crack.
I would crack under that pressure.
No, you won't.
These are the thing, and I think Tiffany will relate to that. These are the things we love here in America, where it's easier. You were talking about being accepted. It's easier to be accepted here for what you do, for the art you give or the work you give. I work for beauty, in beauty, and you know how I work. You literally don't see my face really, because you're not coming to me because I look good. You're coming to me because you want to be good. So I had to work through that. It was a challenge for me. I had someone wanted to brand me, and they wanted me to be putting the nails.
Wait, brand you? You mean
branding,
like stamp
branding.
like something on you?
No, brand me because because I created my own craft. I create my own technique in doing skin. I make my own. I'm back to the old days how I make my products. Really,
She
like
creates
from
her own
nature.
products,
I
yeah.
roast and harvest stuff, and my clients who work in marketing and branding, they want brand me means my products and my services, but then they wanted to change me. You have to put nails, you have to do this, you have to do that. We cannot take, and I refused that. So I refused that. I worked so hard to be accepted for what I am, for what I do. If you like me, fine. If you don't, then you're not in my circle, and I'm fine. And I refused many opportunities because I want this. I enjoy this every day to be me.
How about you, Tiffany?
Her products. Well, I think I hear something similar to that. I left Vietnam as a child and I haven't been back since 1975. So all I can remember was my family, especially my mother, taught me that if a child excel, the father is the family that has luck. That means, you're supposed to accomplish more than your own parents.
Right.
And it's pretty tough.
Tough, yeah.
It's very, very, very tough.
A lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, but it create rebellious. Like, put it this way: pressure create rebellious.
I think based on what I heard, there was probably a lot of pressure for you, Mouna, growing up, and probably a lot of pressure, Tiffany. When I was growing up, if you had a pair of Nike sneaks, you were kind of cool. So I didn't have a whole lot of pressure like that. Like, I just had to make sure I was wearing the right kind of sneaks. So I feel like growing up in the United States, as Paul said, it was a lot of status, but not the pressure and the intensity that it sounds like it is in other countries that are less, surface driven, but it seems like it would go deeper if you didn't do that.
Yes.
With me, it was just if I didn't have the right kind of sneaks or jeans, you were kind of looked at like, oh, you can't afford it, or you're not cool. But it stopped kind of there. Now, there was still bullying going on back then, and like there is now probably, and there's that form. But really, I didn't feel ever when I was growing up that it got to the depths that it sounds like it could get in some countries where it actually affects your family.
Yes, absolutely. My nephew, when he came here and we're going out, he's like, I'm not going out with you. You like that. Because you always have to represent the family, or I don't know what is it. For me, as long as you're clean and you look decent, you respect people, you're a brand. You don't need anything else.
And I think what you bring up about, you mentioned having the real Louis Vuitton and the rest being important in Morocco, and you talk about the Nikes. I think that is something that has changed since my childhood, is that marketing has been really powerful for decades, don't get me wrong, but it has become so all-powerful, and the psychology of marketing is so accomplished and so cynical now, and it really breaks my heart watching. And my kids did pretty well with it, but you're at the point now where people are having brand names tattooed, not because the brand is paying them. They're doing it because they think it's cool to have the Nike swoosh or whatever. That is something that's definitely different. Another thing that was different, thinking about it in the UK, and I can't say if this is true today, so I've been gone 25 years, but I suspect it is that the British are relentlessly sarcastic. That is human, and everyone is sarcastic, pretty much. So you would dread, like, getting on the bus or walking down the street if there was something unusual about your appearance, including your clothing, because they will just say so, and in the funniest ways, And I was kind of glad to come here and realise my kids didn't have to go through that at school. I mean, most of the nicknames are really big, or they were in England, but they usually related to someone's appearance, and your weight or lack of weight. And there'd be a lawsuit if they did that in the school here in the States now. So that was very different. And it did make you extremely self-conscious that complete strangers in England would happily say something sarcastic to you about your appearance, and it would ruin your day. And it stays with you.
If not your life.
Yeah, and then you don't want to go. People become hermits. They don't want to go out, or they react by, if they do go out, they have to drink a lot in order to, get past that social anxiety. And it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't notice that when I emigrated, that what I thought was a normal sense of humour, people just thought I was being rude, because not all Americans do well with sarcasm, and we're so used to it in England that to us it's just normal. So I had to change the way I interacted with people, because a lot of people just thought you were being rude.
Oh.
So yeah, that was something that was different.
So were there a lot of alcohol?
There was a lot of drink. I mean, there's a lot of drinking everywhere. There's certainly a lot of drinking in England, sure. Yeah, the pub culture, which is a beautiful thing too. There's no equivalent anywhere else. The pub is a fantastic institution, and it's a big part of the
Yes,
fabric
yeah.
of British society.
Yeah, I
But-
like the pubs in,
Yeah, it's
in
great.
London a lot.
But yeah, sure, there was a lot of drinking, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it was a big part of it. Yeah.
So, that's interesting. Psychotics, because I always associate with the British as being polite. Because the one that I met, they're very polite.
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up. We were watching a movie, there's a movie that British people love that came out about 15 years ago called This Is England. And there was also 2 sequels. But it's only popular amongst British people because it shows the real normal kind of working class version of Britain in the 80s, it's said at the time of the Falklands War. And it's not the, I mean, that's what my wife and I were talking about, is it's like, this is not the England that Americans want to see. They want it to be Downton Abbey and, yeah, well-spoken people and James Bond and suave, you know, and that does exist in England, but it's not.
How about Keeping Up Appearance? Remember
Exactly,
that show?
yeah. People,
I love
you know,
that show.
In general, people overseas, they love the royal family, they love all that, you know,
Yes.
the very British stuff, you know, Sean Connery, all that, you know, and that, like I said, that is real. That stuff does exist in certain wealthy enclaves, sure. But most of Britain is not like that. No, it's not like that. I assure you. Yeah.
Mouna,
Yes, back to me.
so growing up in Morocco, what was something that you really look upon as like a wonderful part of growing up there? Because we've talked about some of the I'll call it challenges, maybe the stress and the influence of the culture.
Yeah.
But I think we all bring something from where we're from that really is like, wow, that's like, in the United States, it'd say that's apple pie, you know, to them, whatever you equate it to. You know, what was something that to you, it's growing up in Morocco, was wonderful?
I started living in Morocco back and forth when I was 27. Friendship, I had beautiful friends. I still have my childhood friends, who some of them actually live in the US. It just happened. The beaches. I love, my grandma used to have a house by the beach, and maybe that's one of the reasons now I'm by the beach. I went South Bay, living on June 30th. We finished school. The next day we're having 3 months until September 16. That was heaven for me, because we're at grandma. We can run all day and we can go to the beach. That's my most beautiful time in Morocco until my dad sold that house, and that was like a trauma for us, for all of us, the kids. We wanted to keep the house, to the point that I live in a house that looks like my grandma's house. Then I walked in, I'm like, I'm gonna buy this house. And the landlord, why do you like this house? I'm like, because it just reminded me my grandma. And 2 days later, I dreamed of her walking in that house, and I never really dreamed about my grandma. So yes, that's absolutely the best time of Morocco, is the beach.
So you brought that with you to the United States, to the point where now you're living in a house as if you were still there.
Yes, I kind of leave that. I love to be close to the beach. I love the houses that have tiles and stones. I love that. I love that feeling. That's the only thing I want to keep from Morocco. Like,
I
living
love
it.
I love houses that have a Mediterranean look to them.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite
Yeah.
style.
The house has 129 years where I live, and I'm like enjoying every minute in it.
It must be beautiful.
Yeah, it's a simple, very simple house, but has more value that someone else would.
Right.
Food is good in Morocco. Family, music. I love music. I love Moroccan music. I could have been a musician.
What
I do
instrument?
know. I would have played guitar. I would have played piano. Again, I should have. I still can. but I know I have the notes. We're African. We have that rhythm. We have that. We have music in us. We live. We move with music. That's one of the most beautiful things. And if you go to Morocco, I don't know if any one of you have.
I haven't. I wish.
Yeah, it's music.
No, not yet. Someday.
Yeah,
Someday I'll go with you.
we live by music. That's what's keeping Moroccan united. Something else that I love about growing up, that I love in Morocco, that might sound a little bit political, but we love our country. No matter what politics could do, we love our king. We're royalists. And no matter what would happen, Moroccan would always keep Morocco together because we love each other, even though we have so many differences. And we accept each other very, very. We have a problem to accept each other as Moroccan. When we meet here or outside Morocco, we don't really build a community. Each Moroccan is attached to his Morocco.
Right. It's a good way of putting it.
That's
How about you,
it
Paul?
is.
Like, what from where you grew up? Like, what is the one thing that kind of has always stayed with you of just a wonderful thing about
I think
being from there?
I think the unpretentiousness of it, because I think a wonderful thing about Los Angeles in particular, but all big cities, is that you can come to them and to an extent reinvent yourself, because you pop up, no one really knows your past. And certainly in LA I've come across really extreme cases where people are pretending to be a nationality they're not. They've completely rewritten their past, and I don't approve of that. But I think it is. I think the opportunity for people to, especially people who haven't been happy in the past, to come and be a new version of themselves is really exciting and fun. But I do love the unpretentious. I come from a rural area, very small communities, and so everyone knows everything about everyone. You can't be pretentious. You'd be laughed out of the pub because they all know. You know what I mean? They remember when you peed your pants at primary school. They know your dad's a drunk, whatever it is, and that leads to a really kind of, I hate to use a cliche, a really kind of authentic society there. And I'm talking about small communities. That's what I knew. I didn't live in the city, and so yeah, that's a thing I love, and a thing I think I look for here. You're trying to find people who are still authentic, and
Authentic. That's
So,
that's
yeah.
the word.
But I'm not saying that's an English thing. I'm saying that's probably a rural thing.
And what town did you grow up?
I didn't grow up in a town. I grew up in a place called the Forest of Dean, on
The Forest of Dean?
the Forest of Dean. It's called. So it's a forest, right on the border with Wales, so extreme west, and before the internet. And transportation has also become better. Where you live, geography still mattered more in the 70s. And I'm not saying it was isolated. We had bus service and roads and stuff. But the Forest of Dean was. Most people married other people from the Forest of Dean. Most people spent their whole life there. It has to this day it has a very distinct character, to the point where they have not only their own accent but their own dialect. There are whole words that are different. So. In that regard, it's kind of almost the polar opposite of LA, which has been a lot of fun to see both. But there's elements of that I miss. But hey, I can always go back, and I haven't entertained that thought for a moment. So
Favorite food?
favorite British food?
Yeah.
Oh, there is good British food. There's a thing. It's not good for vegetarians though. But Scotch eggs. Do you guys know what Scotch eggs are?
Mm-mm.
A Scotch egg is a hard-boiled egg wrapped in sausage meat and breadcrumbs, deep fried. Not healthy. That's good British food. British breakfasts are amazing. The famous fried breakfast with the fried bread and the eggs and the bacon and the beans. But the national dish is curry. The national dish of the UK is Indian food.
Okay.
I did not know that.
Oh, absolutely. Not officially, but that's. Last I heard, there were more Indian restaurants than there were burger restaurants in the UK. That's everything. So yeah,
That's interesting.
so the Indian food over there is fantastic.
Yeah, Indian food is great.
Yeah, and we're lucky where we live. There is a restaurant of that standard in Santa Clarita, Pizzali. So we're lucky. But that was something I missed at first. When I lived in Dallas, in Dallas the first 5 years. I couldn't find curry like that.
Indian food? No Indian food in Dallas?
Oh no, there was Indian food, but it wasn't as good as England.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
It's probably made
More
for American.
authentic.
Yeah, it is. But in Santa Clarita, there is a really good Indian restaurant. Yeah, so So we're blessed.
Let's go afterward.
Mouna, what
Yeah.
about your favorite dish from Morocco?
From Morocco, I love couscous and a lot of vegetables. Mostly that. I'm more vegan, not totally. I was vegan for 8 years, then I had to become more moderate. And so, yes, I love sometimes a piece of meat in my couscous. Mostly that's, we have pastilla. It's a lot, a big menu. You cannot say I love this or that because so many dishes are delicious. But what I can say, I kind of picked, you said about the curry. He did like the curry in Texas. And you said for Americans, it's for a reason. When I came and I used to cook Moroccan for American, they were not accepting the flavor. It was too much for them. But what I see now, they're I don't know how to say it in English, le palais, how they test,
Yeah,
the testing mechanism. They have developed the taste. Now they like strong stuff, and so Indians can really cook how they cook in their country
That's
because they're
true.
more acceptable.
What about you? What's your favorite food?
Probably pizza.
Nice
So,
and simple.
yeah, it doesn't sound as glamorous as everybody's
No, it's great.
dishes.
I love pizza.
You know, I grew up in America, in Pennsylvania, and you know, Pennsylvania was all about meat and potatoes, which I really wasn't too into, which is probably why I'm a vegetarian now. But pizza, yeah, I mean, I think just pizza is great because it's simple, but you could really make it into something phenomenal. And I mean, if I were to think about one food, you know, from my country that I love, it's pizza.
Right.
You know, it's really funny. Once when my daughter was still young, and a friend of mine, she's from northern Italy, she came over for food, you know, and we decided, what should we eat? And my daughter saw her say, how about pizza? and my friend, she laughed, and she said, I'm from Italy. I don't eat that kind of stuff.
Right.
But now you can do so much, like you said. You
Yes,
can even
yes.
have vegan pizzas.
Yes.
You-
Oh yeah.
Well, I like bread and dough and everything, so when it's baked, it just smells great, tastes good, and then you have some sauce. And
Yep.
who doesn't like cheese? I mean, I think most people probably
But you
like cheese.
cannot eat that every day. Do
Well, you
eat
don't
it?
want
Sometimes,
to.
yeah.
You can,
Sometimes
but you
you
probably don't want to. You know, I think it'll ruin the excitement if you ate it every day. But also, it probably wouldn't be real healthy if you
Yes.
ate it every day.
I love pizza. Thin crust with pepperoni, sausage, hamburgers,
However you want.
sprinkle on it. Yes.
That's the great thing about pizza is that you can customize it into
Yes.
anything that you want. It's
Totally.
you know, it's like a universal. It could be a universal food. I think just
It
kind of
is.
like. Kind of like you got water as the universal solvent. You can use that for many things. I think pizza is the universal food. I think, and Tiffany, like what, you know, growing up in Vietnam, what food do you feel is like your
I
favorite?
still do. I like the noodle soup from the Central. They call it the beef soup. Actually, I had it last Wednesday when I was in Orange County. But the second bowl, they gave me a small bowl. The second one, I said, how about remove the meat, just the broth, and the big fat white noodle. And I'll be fine with that.
And growing up, what's one thing about your country we were talking about that really has become, like, still to this day, the anchor of your enjoyment of Vietnam? Like, what would it be?
I left when I was still young, and like I said, I
How
never
old were
been
you when you
back.
left?
I was like 11, but we lived in a certain complex that we don't get to go out there a lot. And but I must say that my friends, my neighbor, there's 4 families that I was really close to, and 3 of them live in France, and 1 of them live in the north. And I'm still close to them. We're still in touch through Facebook, and sometimes we would see each other. So that was the greatest memory with my neighbors and some of the friends from school that I'm still friends with. We would have a reunion every few years, and most of them are in California.
Yes.
I think for me, you know, there's a couple things. Like, if I were to leave this country and live somewhere else, something that I would keep with me probably is I grew up watching sports. I just love the sports in the United States. But also growing up watching movies. I mean, there's great films created from all over the world, so I wouldn't take anything away from any other country. But growing up in the U.S. and, always wanting to be in Hollywood, growing up as a kid and watching movies, wanting to be an actor, thinking, Hollywood, so like to me, I take those two things as kind of like, that's what I really enjoyed about being in the U.S. is that that we had a culture where you could have so many different things here. I think it might have been different in other countries, but and for some it may sound a little, maybe not as intense or serious as what other people take from their countries. It may seem a little, I don't know, more on the surface level, but I just really, if I were to live somewhere else, I would still watch American sports and still love watching and movies, and I think the core of filmmaking in the U.S. is something that I always enjoyed.
Yeah.
Right. I grew up, one of the things why I've never knew I'm gonna live in the U.S. It just happened, really. But movies are what we would stay up or wake up to watch the Oscars, and ironically, it's today the Oscars.
Like today, yeah, we all
And the Golden Globe, and we have to wake up and watch it. That was our American moment. We grew up like that. That's LA, that's US.
So, U2 was not here last week, but Chris, he said that he created a theater piece called...
Oh, I produced a production of Streetcar Named Desire years ago, and it was just something that I wanted to do. I thought it was a wonderful play by Tennessee Williams, and always wanted to be in that play, but a lot of theater was musical, regional theater that I did was musical. And I thought, one of these days, if there's not a production, I'll just have to produce one. And I did. I produced it myself and directed it and starred as Stanley Kowalski. It was phenomenal. It was, I think that's another thing I think about the U.S. is Broadway, is theater. I mean,
Broadway, yes.
what it has spawned. So, yeah, that was really exciting.
Broadway.
I was way off Broadway with that one.
That's
like
okay.
I was probably 200 miles off Broadway.
That's okay. Off Broadway.
But it
can
was
have
still
very
off Broadway.
interesting-
So,
yeah,
yeah.
very, very interesting place. But you said you want to do a remake, right?
I would love to do a film remake of Streetcar. Of course, I would like to star
I would love
in
you
it.
to do that. I would love for you to do that.
Well, I would love for you to tell other people about it, and maybe we can get it done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So-
a thing I loved about, and still love about the States, and I'm generalizing here, but I always joke about it, is that America is so much more optimistic than Britain, or certainly the Britain I grew up in. And I don't miss that pessimism. And I read a fascinating article years ago that you can see so much about the relative characters of Americans versus British by looking at the soap operas. In Britain, all the soap operas back then were very dour. It was, working class people and characters living miserable lives. Over here, you had Dallas and Dynasty, because Americans liked aspirational things. They wanted to watch what they aspired to.
Yes.
And so there's that idea of you can make yourself feel better about yourself by putting down your neighbours or putting down those around you to make yourself feel or you can aspire to lift yourself. And I saw, maybe it was just my experience, but I saw a lot of that in Britain, just putting down your neighbours to make yourself feel better, and again, that sarcasm, and over here there was a lot more of a aspiring to lift yourself up,
But that sarcasm is also exists wildly in the United States, especially in the workforce.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very true here too that this thing you grew up with, this land of opportunity idea about America. I'm not sure how true it is now, but certainly in my own life, that was very true. I'm a writer by profession, and I maintain that wouldn't have happened in England. It was much harder to break into certain professions unless you went to a certain university.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I literally put a piece of writing I did for my own enjoyment under the door of the LA Weekly, and they printed it.
Oh,
and they hired me.
congratulations.
Wow.
Because they didn't
That's
care.
wonderful. Very
Because they didn't
impressive.
care that I didn't have any training, you know, and,
Yes,
and still have no training. You know?
One thing that's good about America is about schooling, like the flexibility
Yes.
of schooling. No matter how poorly you do in school, like I did, you can still go and get your doctorate if you feel like it
Yes.
later.
Yeah, that's true too.
I'm still going back to school here and there. I would do some session. I went to biology. I do so many things. I go back to college. Some people laugh at you. Some people, and you don't care. You just
Yeah.
build that strength. You that build that we're on the survival mode to grow better. It's survival for us in the U.S. You want to do better.
I think what Paul said is spot on. I always felt like living in the United States, I have a chance. I have a chance to win the lottery. I have a chance
Yes.
to
Totally.
make it big in anything, you know. And I think that's what kind of kept me going, because I was always a dreamer, always wanting to fantasize about what I can do with my life, but knowing that it could technically happen here in the
Yes.
U.S.
And particularly here in LA, I think you could try your hand at anything in this city. I think it's getting less true in the US. I hate to say it, because I think it's getting tougher and tougher for example, small businesses. That was always the thing in the States, that, you know, if you work hard, you can start your own business. But it's much more corporate now. I see mom and pops going under in our town where we live all the time and being replaced by chains.
Yeah.
So that
that's
part,
unfortunate. Yeah.
It is sad, because I thought that was the 1950s American dream, was, you know, work hard and have a great idea and you will thrive. I think that's sadly less true than ever, but I do feel here that you're judged on your merits. It kind of comes back to what we were saying about appearance. You're judged on what you can produce, what
Yes.
you do, not so much on, you know, who you know or which university you went to, or, you know, because people always say that to me, like, oh, you must have had, you know, hookups in the journalism industry, you must have had connections. I had no connections. I just rolled into LA. I didn't know anybody. It was all about what you produced. It was all about the copy, you know. So
And I think growing up, it was like, go to New York or L.A. and you'll make it in something,
right.
right? So, I mean, I think, you know, it still happens to this day, but I do agree with what you were saying, Paul. I do see changes going on in business every day, but I still think, you know, if you have a dream here and you're willing to work and expose yourself and be vulnerable, you can make it happen. So,
Let's hope so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hope so.
It is not it is not hard. It is hard. It's not easy, but you have to enjoy that moment while you're doing it. While you are driving, that's the journey, and I think the American journey is fantastic, because when you produce, you can be an artist, you can be an esthetician, you can be a carpenter, you can be an actor. When you work hard, you might not grow or make the money. For me, success is not the money. Success is the love that people show towards what you have accomplished. The money might come, the money might not. But we have that in the US. You don't need to be who's your uncle. Those are things that made me decided to stay, because I never want to leave Morocco, but I ended up staying in America, because in Morocco, unfortunately, it's always about who you know,
And I'm glad you did.
what's your last name, your connections. I
Yeah,
hope it's
yeah.
changing now, but we don't have that here.
Right. America's still largely what they call a meritocracy, that merit rises to the top, you know, and I think that's what I love about it. And certainly, yeah, for my individual life, because I have zero qualifications in my profession, it would have been a disaster in most other countries. It just wouldn't have remotely happened, you know. But I've been able to just do the work, you know,
Yes.
and without any kind of gatekeepers on that work, you know. And I really appreciate that. I don't think it would have happened in Britain.
Speaking of work, Paul, you have a new album.
We do have a new album.
Yes, that's wonderful.
The first single comes out on literally this Wednesday. It's called Overthrown. It comes out just to YouTube, so the video comes out. You won't be able to actually download the music. And the record is finished, and it's being mixed. We've had some delays with the mixing, unfortunately, but it's being mixed right now. And so hopefully this summer or later this year, you know. So yeah, it is very exciting. And then,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you've been
It's exciting.
you've been recording videos for that album.
we did one in December that we shot in downtown LA. That's the one that comes out on Wednesday, and that was very exciting. Then we were supposed to do one, as I was mentioning to you earlier today, a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, because we specifically wanted to shoot a video in the snow, and a member of the band lives in Lake Arrowhead. So he said, as soon as it snows, let's do this. But of course, so he said there's a storm coming in, let's do it on Tuesday. But of course, as you all know, that storm was so crazy, we couldn't even get up there. So that video has not been done, because he ended up getting 6 feet of snow.
Who would have thought filming ceased in Southern California
I know.
due to snowstorm, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
we
that's
just
insane.
couldn't get up there. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of videos for the album, because 2 members of the band, not me, 2 members of the band have ability in that area. We can make the videos ourselves, and as you'll see on Wednesday,
Wow.
they're very convincing too. So,
Looking forward to it.
exciting.
yeah, it
I
is
heard your
exciting.
first album and I loved it, so I'm looking forward to the second.
So, well, thank you. Yeah, we are. You know, it's been quite an odyssey, as you know. So I'm amazed there's a second album at all. I'm very appreciative.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Exciting, yeah.
Thanks, Mouna, for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Like,
Mouna.
that was a pleasure. That was nice.
And Paul for joining us on Filtered 90211.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed our conversation today, and as soon as I get home, I'm going to put some aloe vera on my scalp and start growing some hair. So,
And your
what else?
skin.
What else do you do on a Sunday?
And your skin
Oh, and my
and
skin,
your
yeah,
neck.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it
We
all over
just
my
got
body.
little
What about
piece.
the award tonight?
The Oscars.
Oscar,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm excited. I mean,
It's going to be interesting to see who wins, as always, right?
yes.
Yes, the Oscars. We're all here for the Oscars.
Well,
We'll see. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
folks.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you
the rest
so
of your day.
much.
You too.
It's a pleasure meeting you, Paul.
Yeah, likewise.
It's nice
Thanks
to
for
see you again, Mouna.
Absolutely. Same here.
And I'll see you next
I'll
week.
see you next week. Okay.
Take care.
Sweet.
I'm hungry.
Me too.
You?
A donut this morning. I'm finding there is this beautiful donut place. I don't eat donuts, but I have to try this one.
Want to go somewhere? We still have time.
Yes, your turn.